we are shifting as state departments of education, in charge of curriculum, to being much more technology focused. And I know that I have been very frustrated over the years in Georgia as we followed education policy, but even in business you need information to measure your progress. And for years we spent millions of dollars and struggled to get even the most basic information to our teachers and educators. And finally, Bob came on board. He has an experience in IT working for Fortune 500 companies, including Georgia Pacific. He came on board and made it happen. And our superintendent even said, what Bob did in 1 year, we've struggled to get done in 8 years. And that's really the truth. And I don't know about you, but I struggle with all my usernames and passwords. The last thing you really want is another username and another password to try to remember. Well, his brilliance was teachers and parents and educators already have usernames and logins at their local school system level. So he allowed people to access the state data using those existing systems. So no one had to learn anything else. It was very easy. And so now teachers have that diagnostic information in real time, and they can use it to affect their teaching and the learning in the classroom. And I think in Georgia we're going to see a lot of progress because of that. But now, most recently, Bob has been working on digital learning. And Georgia, I believe, is quickly becoming a leader in digital learning, thanks to Bob. And we asked him to come in and give us an overview of what's going on in the classroom, how we are going to try to personalize learning for every student. So please join me in welcoming Bob Swiggum.
Well, I think it's working. Is it working?
You can use that.
Can I stand up and use this one?
Yeah.
It's working?
Either one.
Okay. Well, I'll wander around and talk and put it in my pocket. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. So, let me get this shoved in my pocket here for a second. There we go. All right. So I'm going to talk about personalized learning. First of all, you have to understand, I am not an educator. If I start using terms incorrectly, it's because I'm not a teacher. I've never been a teacher. I've spent my whole career in the business world, working for, as you heard, Fortune 500 companies. So when I got to education, which was 3 years ago, I was pretty much in shock at the lack of technology inside of education. I couldn't understand why it had not been embraced the way the business world had embraced technology, because it really could really use it. And so what I did was I went about trying to utilize technology. And there's a natural tendency to resist it. I don't know exactly what it is, but the driver in the business world has always been dollars. And I heard it, and it was like coming home, sitting in the back, listening to all the entrepreneurs and the startups talking about the money and the venture capital. We don't talk about anything like that in education, just don't. But that bottom driver, that financial thing, is what always made technology be embraced in the business world. In education, that thing's not there. Yes, they need money to operate. We need money to operate, but we don't go out of business if we don't do things well. We just get more money. So that driver's not there to embrace the technology. So what we're trying to do is work within the confines of education and provide a value proposition. So the latest thing we're working on is this personalized learning. So I got a slide that we're working on that's going to be popping up in here in just a second that I just want to talk about. There it goes. Okay, so there. And again, I take this to very simple steps. There's personalized learning. It's really how fast a child learns and the way they learn. Those are the two things, in my mind, that identify what a personalized learning environment is going to look like. Is how fast does the kid learn, and are they a visual learner? Are they a tactical learner? What kind of a learner are they? Those two styles put together is how a kid learns. and you've all done the same thing. In fact, I just did an article on somebody, and I related back to my math class. When I was in, how many people took algebra in high school? You all did, right? Well, some of you probably did great. I hated algebra because it was this theoretical thing that made no sense to me. But then the next year I took geometry, which is very visual. I mean, lines, things, charts, made perfect sense to me. I got a D in algebra, I got an A in geometry. You know, it didn't make sense to me. My learning style is very visual, okay? But that's what kids are today. The problem is, in education, a teacher's got 100 kids. A teacher can't teach 100 different ways. You just can't do it. We've got 100 kids. I pretty much have to stand in front of them and I've got to teach. If I can give them some extra stuff, I'll try, but I got 100 kids. Okay? Teachers need technology to solve this problem. And that's what we're trying to do in Georgia. We're trying to give them that technology. As Kelly said, we've already given them the longitudinal data system. Things that people don't always understand is we have 185 districts in Georgia. About 175 of them do not keep their longitudinal history. Now I know this is like, if you were in the business world, you'd go like, you don't keep your history? Well, how do you know anything? Well, we do. We keep it down in a paper vault in the basement. It's called a CUME file. So we have this big CUME file on every student. But when that teacher gets 100 new kids, the only way to figure out what those kids' learning styles are and learning rates are is to go down to that paper vault, pull 5 files at a time, take them back to their desk, make some notes, take those 5 files back, get another 5, bring it back to the... That's how it works in Georgia right now for the districts that aren't using LDS. For the districts that are using LDS, at the touch of a button, all 100 kids, all of their CUME file is available in a sorted sequential manner so the teachers can actually look at kids by attendance, by their reading levels, by their high stakes test scores. All that stuff's available. I'd love to give you a demo, but I don't have time to give you a demo of all those tools. But what I'm talking about today is personalized learning, okay? So what we've done is we've given that brick and mortar setting the longitudinal data system. We've given them something called the teacher resource link and the student growth model. So what I want to do is I want to show for personalized learning, we're doing 3 things for a student and a parent. We're giving enhanced tools to the brick and mortar teacher. We're also providing a virtual learning experience through either the Georgia Virtual School. There are multiple districts that have virtual schools, and there are actually charter schools that are full-time virtual enrollments that are available to students. And then we also have the blended learning model, which is a combination of taking some of these types of courses and the brick and mortar setting and letting kids learn online but still in a brick and mortar setting. We're building tools in each one of these disciplines to allow teachers to do that. That's the personalized learning that we're making available through the systems that we're building in Georgia. And the thing that you have to understand is it's real easy to go to a district and make something happen. It is hard to go to 185 districts and make something happen. That's one of the things that people don't understand about education. I know you've all seen these great things like Mooresville, North Carolina, where they've got, you know, full-blown one-to-one computing, and they talk about how great it is, and it is. Okay, but there are 15,000 school districts in the United States. Mooresville is one of those 15,000. My job is to scale things. My job is to get all 185 districts the same tools. There are plenty of metro districts that have these tools already that can do all this stuff. Okay, there's about 10 of them in Georgia, but there's 175 that can't. So the importance of this is going to every teacher. All 120,000 teachers have access to this, not just the teachers in the metro districts. All 1.7 million kids have access to this, not just the kids in the metro district. It's for the whole state. So this is what we're trying to do from a personalized learning environment. And rather than me just going on about these things, I'd rather have you guys ask questions about it. So I have one other slide that I don't know if I can get to. Somebody can, though. So I'm just going to pop over to this slide for a second and just explain something, and then we're going to pop back to this slide that's on there right now. So when I talk about, ooh, that's not my slide. It should be on the hard drive. That's the one. And I'm going to take the other one back in just a second.
Okay.
Okay. So this right here, every one of those little dots that you see is a tool that we have built and are rolling out to the teachers of Georgia. This is how we're delivering that personalized learning environment for the brick and mortar teachers, the brick and mortar and the blended learning. These are all the tools that we're developing, getting to that personalized learning environment. There's also tools down here that are delivering the 21st century classroom instruction for the teachers. We also focus on the PD for the teachers as well as instruction for the kids. So again, I'm sure Kelly will have this thing available on his website, so you guys will be able to see this. So I wasn't going to go over this in great detail, but it's not as simple as the picture I'm showing you. There's a lot of stuff behind the scenes that are being built right now to deliver this to the kids in Georgia. So if you can go back to that other one. We'll go to the simple one and let you guys ask questions, because I'm much more interested in what you guys think than what I can tell you. Because the reason I do these sessions is because I look for feedback all the time. I'm always looking for people to tell me that's not what we should be doing. We should be doing something different. So I really like your questions and I like the feedback. So ask away.
Bob, I'm going to start off and ask you, all this is online, and in metro Atlanta not as much, but out in rural Georgia we do have challenges sometimes with bandwidth. A lot of this is video, so we're going to have very high bandwidth into our schools, but we also want these kids, the beauty of digital is they can access it on the bus or in their homes. What is happening in Georgia from the public and private sector to address that issue?
Well, there's an initiative going on right now. There's multiple initiatives. The one that I'm most familiar with is we buy 3 meg of bandwidth per school right now through a process called E-rate, which is a government program through the FCC that pays for up to 80% of the funding for internet. And so we give 3 meg per school. We spend about $3 million a year. E-rate kicks in about $9 million. So for $12 million, we are buying 3 meg per school, which is enough to get the longitudinal data system out there. It's enough to get the teacher resource link out there, which are resources. But it's not enough for a child to start logging in and utilizing the system. So what we're doing is we're going to work with the Board of Regents. They've got a system called PeachNet, which is a university backbone. The universities are all connected by a university network. And we're going to ride on top of that. We're going to leverage that and deliver 100 meg per school, essentially for the same cost, because we're leveraging an internal state resource. So that is in the works right now. We hope to have that up and running over the next year and a half. So those are the types of things we're doing to get the bandwidth out there. There's also all kinds of programs. I know of one program from Comcast where they do things where I think they call it Essentials, or Internet Essentials, something like that, that talks about how to give kids in low poverty or high poverty areas access to equipment for a very low price. So I mean, there's those types of partnerships going on all the time. The state obviously doesn't get involved directly with those. We are just involved with the PeachNet piece.
One thing, there's another program the governor and the legislature put in it's over 3 years, going to be $20 million in bonds to take, what you're doing is getting the 100 megs to the system. This is going to let them get it from the system to each of the schools. So hopefully, the plan is in the next 3 years, all of our schools will be connected with fiber. That's pretty exciting, and that's where we're going. So I just wanted to make sure everybody understood. There was a question about that earlier today.
The 20 million won't fix, the 20 million over the next 3 years will help make the connections, but I don't want you to think that 20 million is enough to buy a computing device for every child in Georgia, because that's really where you need to go with the one-to-one computing. So I don't want to make you think that. It is to help get the connection going all the way down into the classroom. So, questions?
Hi. I wanted to ask, first of all, I applaud all that we've done in Georgia to really up our game in education through virtual learning. I think that's awesome. However, I had a friend whose daughter graduated from a virtual school, and they didn't have the systems in place. She lost the Hope Scholarship because they weren't able to electronically send her records to the Hope Scholarship Commission. Has that been fixed? And if not, how quickly could we get that fixed?
Well, it depends what virtual school you're talking about. There's only 3 full-time virtual schools, and they are all privately owned. They have nothing to do with the state. So I couldn't fix that if I wanted to. You're talking about school systems that have their own systems and their own way of transmitting records. It doesn't come into the state. Yeah.
The learning rate, one of the big constraints right now is seat time. So kid in the 4th grade has to start at the 4th grade, only gets progressed at the end of the year to the 5th grade if he passes the end of the 4th year state exam. How do you see, with all this investment in technology, moving to a competency-based system where kids can progress when they're ready? So some kids may take more time, some kids get less, but we can truly tap into their learning rate, because the big constraint right now is we're still functioning on based on seat time.
And what you've got is a very large structure that is not going to change overnight. But I've watched. The Georgia Virtual School is the state's virtual school. We don't have full-time kids in the virtual school. We don't graduate kids. We fill gaps. So the kids down in South Georgia that want to take advanced physics, they can do that through the Georgia Virtual School, but they will get the credit through their local school. So what we're trying to do with the Georgia Virtual School is exactly what you're talking about. I know that kid who's taking advanced physics, it's an 18-week course. If they can get it done in 9 weeks, they're done in 9 weeks. But at the end of those 9 weeks, the kid has to wait for 9 more weeks to then take the CRCT or the end of course test, because that is, the test. So I know that we can compress the learning cycle. I know that you can do this through online education, but somehow we have to change when do you take that test and when can you move on? Because obviously the child can't move on until they finish the test and get the credit. So this is up to you guys. You guys are the policy people. The policy has to change on seat time. If it stays the same, where you have to sit in the seat for 180 days and until you do that, you can't move on, then education is not going to change very much.
The article in the paper yesterday about testing, it connects to what Sajan, I guess, was asking about seat time, or somebody was asking about seat time. But how can we, and that was a very demoralizing article, I thought, from the whole education enterprise, to see the irresponsibility that somehow pervades some of our testing. But most important is it doesn't personalize the exam to the child, as you were saying. It's kind of a one-size-fits-all kind of thing. Where do you see what you're doing here that is going to be reflected so that we really can understand what the child is learning from his perspective, and not just from a you're 16 and you need to know this, when it may take longer or may take shorter? Right.
Well, the world of assessment is changing rapidly right now. As you know, there's 2 national assessments that are being developed called PARC and Smarter Balance that are meant to gauge those learning styles and those tests along the way rather than one big test at the end. But as you know, Georgia's also dropped out of the one we were in, which was PARC. So I'm not sure where we're going to end up with in the near term for our assessment, but I know that that's where assessment is moving to, as the child is taking the subjects, the tests happen and then adjust for that child's learning rate and learning style.
So there's a merger
Yeah.
between what you're doing and what the testing people are doing?
Not yet, because I don't know what the testing people are going to end up doing yet. So right now Georgia has to figure out what we're going to do for high stakes tests, because we dropped out of PARC and we have to have some type of a high stakes test that is aligned with the national assessment. So that's what they're focused on right now. And no, we're not trying to wrap it back into this just now.
One thing you can do with technology is this allows the child to move at their own speed. And I might need more time in algebra and you might need less time, and vice versa. That means the testing could be on demand. We could end these end of the year tests, which somebody has called, I think Michael Horn calls an autopsy at the end of the year. It's too late to do anything about it. The kids are already moving on. Where you break them into smaller pieces, it's going to be much more helpful to the teachers. And so I think that's a real opportunity. By pulling out of PARC, maybe we can go back and do something really differently. Who knows?
Thanks. How would you describe the posture of the teachers and teachers' unions towards these initiatives, both here and to the extent that you can comment broadly nationally?
Well-
on embracing versus resisting?
So far, we've made presentations of this to the teacher associations here in Georgia, and they seem to be very supportive of it. In fact, they've had it on their websites and offered to do training. So we think the folks in Georgia are fine with it. Nationally, people don't have trouble with the LDS, the longitudinal data. What they have trouble with are the teacher evaluation systems. Our teacher evaluation system in Georgia is not part of this. It's a whole separate standalone system that is run by a vendor. And they're working through that right now as far as getting all the teachers on board. And I think this coming year would be the first actual year of holding it in as an accountability measurement. So it remains to be seen how that's going to pan out in Georgia. I know that in some union states, it is very much hotly contested. But I don't see that happening in Georgia. They seem to have taken a very nice, pragmatic approach to it and involved all the associations in the decision making. So I don't think we're going to have as many problems as some of the other states, but I'm not sure.
We got time for one more.
Well, I think it was somebody else over there that was up. Okay, thank you. Full disclosure, I'm Senator Seay, so I'm just one of 56 in the state, but I am on science and technology, and I wanted to say first and foremost, from my perspective, having come off the school board some 20 years ago, what I've seen happen in Georgia is the lack of stability for our children and their education. Recognizing that we're in a technology environment, I'm very thankful to the Internet Essentials program, which has helped my district, Clayton County, and a lot of the kids get access. And that's part of that divide that we've been talking about. But as we move forward with education, one of the things I'd like to have happen is full investment in our children here in Georgia for their education. We have got to make sure that we're taking everybody along as we move Georgia forward. I personally think that I'm very proud of us involving technology as we move forward, because I think that Georgia is behind so many other states in terms of educating our children. So I want to say thank you to you for trying to bring us full circle into where we need to be going. But last and not least, I just think that as we move forward with education, we need to have a system in place that governs and keep watch over everybody that's educating our children. I mean, I heard you say that we don't have that in Georgia. They are private, and even if they are private, they need to be under that umbrella of the total education for every child. Not a question, but...
And thank you very much for presenting, and showing that there is a plan from the state that's being moved forward. I come in from an interesting perspective. I had a educational mobile learning for AT&T nationally, so K-12 and higher ed. And so the whole moving to digital, moving to with technology, the point is to kind of make the technology part almost like a 3-ring binder or spiral notebook, something that it gets out of the way. It's not the focus, but it's an enabler. And along with this, in that move towards, you only get the personalized learning. You only get the moving, the competency-based stuff with the technology, because then it can adapt. You can have the same lesson, and if say it's building a mind map or something for a story, you can teach the same lesson similarly. You can, depending upon where they are, if they're below where they need to be. It could be almost all filled out. It's a matter of making sure that the parts of the story you can be able to drag and drop them or point in the right direction. If they're on pace, you can be able to then do a little more of filling in the blank and filling it out. If they're ahead of the curve, being able to do the whole thing from scratch. And you can't do that without effective use of technology. And on top of that, where things are exciting, I'm seeing from my standpoint, and why Georgia and a reputation for technology, and this whole talk about ecosystems over this morning, it's only until you can scale things out, as he was talking about, where you have also 20, 30, 40 different companies that are providing the textbooks, the applications, material. It's not until that ecosystem exists and you can scale it out till we really see effective use. Because right now, even if you're moving towards one-to-one learning, there's only a fraction of what's available out there. So it's still this disconnection of even schools that have the technology. Only 10 or 20% of what they're doing is actually digital at this point. So it's going to take a while to get there. It's really neat to see it, and so I'm glad to see that there's a plan in place to try to help get us there.
It's a plan, and it's being implemented. We do have parts of it up and running, but Georgia has a ways to go.
Can I ask just one final question? And that is there a model out there for Georgia with respect to business involvement and investment in education system? I mean, how do we get those two things together? We've made some strides on the higher ed level. SCAD here in Atlanta and Savannah is a good example of how their mission is to sort of integrate education and with the idea of real-world business experience. What for K through 12? Is there something out there that we could, aspire to?
One of my biggest disappointments in education, and I've got a couple, but one of the biggest ones is the lack of business involvement in K-12. They seem to be involved with higher ed because that's where the graduates are coming from. But you get down to K-12, they don't, and I understand why, now that I'm in it, it's confusing. And it changes all the time. The minute you get a new leader in, things change dramatically. In the business world, you have a CEO, you've got a succession plan, things move with a plan, with a strategy. It just kind of goes like this in education. So I understand that, but there really is a need for business to invest in K-12. It really, really is, because there's so much low-hanging fruit in education that if just a few dollars could make such a dramatic impact on K-12 education. But what you have to do is, if you do decide you want to invest in education, make sure that you've got somebody that you're holding accountable for that money. Because education is used to getting the money without a lot of accountability. The federal government dumps billions of dollars on us with essentially no accountability. And so we're used to taking the money and doing things without really worrying about what the end result is. So if you invest, please make sure that you ask for accountability. Say, if I give you this, what am I going to get from it? What's the end result? And the metrics that actually go in place. Because if you don't do that, then you really are just throwing your money away.
Help me thank Bob Swiggum.
Give me.
Thank you so much, Bob. We are very lucky in Georgia to have Bob Swiggum. We're not where we need to be in K-12, but through technology, we can make that quantum leap to get this information to every child at once. I'm a big fan of charter schools, but it's hard to scale up charter schools. And I think everyone would agree the most important variable in education is the teacher. We want to try to make sure every child in Georgia has access to great teachers. And I think technology is going to allow us to do that. So thrilled that Bob is on the job. We're making progress, and I think we're going to be a leader. We are a leader. We're going to be much more of one in the years to come. I want to thank you for coming today. Thanks again to Lylan and Google for helping us out, and it's been a pleasure to be with you. Thank you for coming. We will have the videos and the PowerPoints on our website, georgiapolicy.org. If you want to sign up for our email address, you can go to our website there and sign up for that and other events. We have a big legislative briefing on October 11th. We're going to talk about higher education and technology as one of the topics. There are lots of giveaways. Google has some water containers outside. Please feel free to grab one. And some of the demonstrations are going to be going on for the next few minutes. So please try out Google Glass and all the other things. Thank you again for coming. We're adjourned.